But what I want to share with you guys is one of my subscribers sent me this video. It's about the COVID-19 mandates and natural immunities. It was very interesting, and I'm gonna share some of this stuff with you. And I'm gonna also leave a link below because I want you to watch the whole. I think it's like 38 minutes, 40 minutes. But I'm gonna put a link for you to watch that. I'm just put a few clips here that I want to share with you guys, and you tell me what you think. I may pause it and discuss a few things, but let's watch some of this together. Here we go.
All I can ask is the viewers to share this. Tell your friends, I know this is long, and we didn't even scratch the surface of what we need to discuss. This shouldn't have been necessary. As our information grew, as we became better and better educated, less ignorant about the coronavirus, COVID, the COVID vaccines, this should have been made public every step along the way. But it wasn't. So again, I'm just asking the viewing public to have an open mind, respect these individuals who have paid a significant price, professionally, reputationally.
How many of you in this room, recognizing there are doctors, there are PhDs, there are attorneys, media experts, other scientists, public citizens, how many of you personally have witnessed censorship, intimidation, or professional reprisal and damage as a result of your advocacy for patients? I want this to be recorded. That is 80% of this room have experienced something negative in their life in trying to promote and help compassionately something positive for patients suffering with a potentially fatal illness.
I'd like to start really quick with the story. So a high-risk individual approaches me, 50 years old, obese, type 1 diabetic, calls me, I have COVID. This was about a year ago. What do I do? Help, I'm going to the ER, my oxygen's 86. I have excruciating pain in my lungs. So I said, you're going to the pharmacy, don't go to the ER. I called in some early treatment medications of the drugs which shall not be named. Said individual calls me a couple hours later and says, you know that excruciating 9 out of 10 lung pain, it's now 2 out of 10, 6 hours later. Well, I know the mechanisms of the medication I prescribed. A few hours later, in the next morning, he calls me, he says, you know that oxygen saturation of 86, it's now 98%. I said, isn't that fantastic? Early treatment works. That individual is my brother. I am my brother's keeper.
Again, I'll point out there's so much we don't know. I would have liked to seen a much larger dose of modesty coming out of our federal health officials and the legacy media and big tech when it came to, we would be so much better off if there was robust debate and discussion.
I have to say, I'm going to call it out, and I'm known for this. I call it like I see it. I'm calling attention to the corruption. If you look at these innumerable failed policies, there's only one way to understand them. They are literally written by pharmaceutical companies. Almost every single policy serves the interest of a pharmaceutical company. However, if you look outside the United States and look around the world, there have been numerous successes.
Some of those heart-wrenching stories I'm hearing where a loved one's in the hospital and the family's begging the hospital to do more, trying to save the person's life, and they're just being told, now your loved one, there's not much hope. Get ready for the worst, and they just won't do anything.
I'm gonna pause it right there because this touches home right here. Me and my wife. If you guys been watching my channel here in February 2021, my wife and I, we come down with COVID. So we went through the quarantine. My wife had a bad case, but we stayed at home. We took care of ourselves, and we made it through. And after quarantine, we went and got tested, and we tested negative after that. And every 3 to 4 months, we get our antibodies checked. My wife's antibodies is off the chart, and mine is up there. I do have antibodies, but like I said, we get it checked every 3 or 4, and we're doing fine. I'm glad we stuck to our guns and decided, hey, we're going to look into more research before we go and get all these jabs. We want to learn a little bit more about it. But what he said about patients going in the hospital and not being treated, my mother-in-law, which she stays with us, she's disabled, and we got to take care of her. We have nurses come in. But she had a problem with her leg. She had a little sore, and so ambulance had to come by and take her to the hospital. And when they took her to the hospital, they tested her. They told my wife that she can't come in the hospital with her, that nobody could come. They're going to take care of her. So they took her in the hospital, and my wife kept bugging them, say, hey, I need to be there with my mom. And my wife is a nurse. She's a registered nurse. So they kept saying, no, you can't come. And they kind of got upset with my wife because she kept saying, hey, I need to be there. So they said, okay, we'll call you back in here about 15 minutes. And they called my wife, and they told my wife that her mom had COVID. My wife looked at me. She said, my mom got COVID. She haven't had a cough. She haven't had a fever. She haven't had none of these symptoms. And she said, why y'all say she had COVID? They said, well, we tested her and she had COVID. My wife asked for the results, but some kind of way they couldn't give her the results. So what they told my wife is that they're going to put her mom in a room with a lot of other COVID patients. So my wife said, no, I want you guys to send my mom home right now. I don't want her going into no other rooms. We'll take care of her at home. They said, well, you got to sign this consent. So my wife signed the consent, and they brought my mother-in-law back home. And 2 days later, we had her tested, and she tested negative. If we would have left my mother-in-law in that hospital, she would not be here today. And she's doing great right now. All of us doing great. So what he just said about the hospitals, this stuff, we had to witness this up front. If we wouldn't have taken my mother-in-law out of that hospital that night, she probably would have been gone within a few days. But anyway, we'll continue this.
If I may quote, in May of 1995, Nelson Mandela said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." In my opinion, our public policies in managing this have had a particularly strong adverse effect on our children, and vaccine mandates for our children are completely unjustified at this point.
One worry that public health officials have mentioned is, well, if we acknowledge that natural immunity is a reality, which of course it is, and it's epidemiology and immunology 101, they're worried that people would go out and deliberately get COVID rather than getting the vaccine. But of course, the issue around acknowledging natural immunity is, what about the people who already have had COVID? That's what we're talking about here, right? And we can give people advice on, avoiding infection and so forth. But ignoring all the folks that have already recovered from COVID is not a good public health policy. Acknowledging natural immunity would lead to the next very basic question: how many people have it? And the fact that 2 years into the pandemic, we still do not know exactly how many Americans have had COVID it's an astonishing failure of public health to do basic epidemiological research. The two most basic facts that every medical student learns first about every new illness that they learn about are incidence and prevalence. How many new cases and how many total cases over a given period of time, right? One very important fact about natural immunity is that there has not been a single reported case of someone getting reinfected and subsequently transmitting the virus to others, which we know is not the case for vaccines. Vaccines don't offer, against COVID, that kind of sterilizing immunity. So we FOIA'd the CDC and said, please show us any evidence of someone with natural immunity getting reinfected and transmitting the virus to others. They couldn't come up with any data. We actually put that in our lawsuit. The university's experts could not come up with a single counterexample. It's a very dangerous thing to say, right? Because almost nothing in medicine and science is 100%. You can always find outliers. But natural immunity, people with natural immunity are the safest people to be around. You're not going to get COVID from somebody who's already had COVID.
So we are seeing actually the vaccinated carry a high volume of virus because they don't have this secretory IgA. So this false construct from our federal agencies that this is a pandemic and the unvaccinated are spreading is a pathophysiological lie. The vaccinated are carrying high volumes in their nose, their tears, their mouth of virus because the vaccine does not neutralize in that location of the body where the virus comes in. So this is very important. This is why mandates are absolutely now moot, irrelevant, and out the window and need to go away worldwide like most of the world has done already. This is the funny uncle. This is not SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. This is COVID-22 meh.
But these are crimes. You know what's going on in this country right now? Is that the CDC has been captured by the pharmaceutical industry. They sent out a memo in August of 2021. They sent out a similar memo back in the spring of 2020, telling the nation's physicians and pharmacists not to use generic medicines. We are now in a state in this country where Senator Johnson asked the question, how can we get the average U.S. citizen to treat or get treated? We have pharmacists across the land who are refusing to fill these because they've been manipulated and brainwashed into thinking that the FDA hasn't approved the use, as if that matters. Off-label prescriptions and prescribing has been going on for decades. It's encouraged when there are no effective treatments. Yet I have to, when I try to treat my patients, and Dr. Marble can attest to this, we have pharmacists who refuse to fill some of the safest and low-cost medicines known in the history of medicine.
All the different drugs that there have been some research on. And what was interesting about this chart is Dr. Corey circled the ones that are recommended by our health agencies. They all range from $700 up to $3,200. All the ones that are not recommended are the ones that are, a couple bucks. Go figure.
We also had the wrong bodies leading the vaccine program. Remember, the FDA is supposed to be the safety watchdog. The National Institutes of Health is the government research body, and the CDC is the outbreak investigation body. Right now, the CDC and the FDA are the named sponsors of a vaccine program. If American can learn anything, we should never have the FDA and CDC be a sponsor of a public program in administering a product. It has been a giant and colossal mistake. We should have had a separate body, a government body, be the sponsor of the vaccine program. The vaccine manufacturers can supply the products, and then we needed the separate Data Safety Monitoring Board, Clinical Event Committee, and Human Ethics Committee there in oversight. And if this would have happened based on the emergence of unexplained deaths, I am testifying today that the program would have been shut down in February because of excess mortality.
They will attack you, they will threaten you, they will put you in a state of fear and say, you can only do what we say, but don't save a life. And by the way, the vaccines are expired because Omicron is here. And now they still want to mandate them. So they threaten us and threaten us and threaten us, and we're hunted for caring and being compassionate and empathetic and wanting to help humanity.
I'm listening to my colleagues call out all of the inanities, the insanities, the absurdities, okay, these departures of our policies from what we know are to be scientific truths. These things like denial of natural immunity. We have to understand why. To sit here and point fingers and they're doing this wrong and that wrong, why are they doing this? There could be multiple reasons. The simplest and most easily understandable and provable is every vaccine, these novel patented high-cost drugs is profits. They are putting profits ahead of patients. We can call attention to all of these policies. They are non-scientific. They're failing at having scientific support, yet they're being carried out and they're being distributed across the country. And doctors and states and health departments are willingly accepting these without question, without critical thinking. And that's what I want us to be clear that we're calling attention to today. This is corruption. Plain and simple, it's corruption.
All right, thanks for watching and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to see the full video, I'll put a link in the description. And have a great day. And don't pay too much for gas. All right, talk to you guys later.